We're all aware that first place gets 25 points in F1, but what would the sport look like if 11th got the 25 instead? Well, I can tell you now, it looks very different. So the points work in the same order as usual. The only difference is that it starts at 11th place instead of 1st. And so I'll be counting 11th as a win, with 12th and 13th being podiums. So into the results. Get used to this bottom 10 because the top teams will only score points here if they finish outside the top 10, and that's very rare. I mean, Antonelli's found a way to secure 3 wins and 124 points, so I guess it's not that unfair. Hulkenberg is 10th with 2 wins and 3 podiums, and it's going to be weird not saying, and Hulk gets his first podium finally, because it's actually happened in real life. I still cannot believe that. Into the top 9, Lawson gets us started by tying 8th place Gasly for points, but losing out because Pierre got one 11th place finish. Behrman is 7th, and Albon is the only driver to be kind of close to his real life standing in 6th. Bortoleto gets 5th despite not getting any wins, and 11 points ahead of him. Ocon is 4th with just 1 win again. As you can see so far, the wins are really spread out because it's not too hard to finish in 11th place. But in order to make a good campaign, you need to finish there consistently. As we move into the top 3, we have 3 different drivers representing 3 different constructors: Sainz, Doohan, and Stroll. Lance would be 3rd in a championship he should be winning, once again with just 1 win. But the top 2 are quite close, being separated by just 24 points. And despite getting 2 more wins, it was Sainz in 2nd, with Jack Doohan claiming the title in season 1 with 4 wins and 10 podiums. Williams just about get ahead of Alpine in the standings, and they are kind of far ahead of 3rd place Haas. In the midfield, it's quite close until we get to Mercedes in the bottom 4. Big shout out to Antonelli for getting all of their points in season 1, as Russell was 20th with 0. It's now time for the moves. Aston kick us off by dropping Fernando Alonso for Antonelli, who has clearly impressed them with his ability to finish 11th consistently. Sainz would go to Mercedes in turn, with Ocon replacing him at Williams and Paul Aaron joining the grid with Haas. After season 1 and a big point system change, Max Verstappen would retire from the sport, with Norris replacing him at Red Bull, Russell going to McLaren, Piastri heading to Mercedes, Gasly getting a deserved move to McLaren, and finally Lawson joining Alpine, with Pepe Marti joining the grid with VCarb. I think season 1 has been a success. Now time for season 2. I think we can gloss over the bottom 10 pretty quickly each season, as nothing is going to change, seeing as there's no regulation changes. So moving into the top 10, where the order does indeed change, we've got the Williams dropping to the bottom of the left side. Bortoleto has also dropped a lot, as his teammate gained a few positions, with Antonelli not doing amazing for his new midfield team. A team that is doing well though is VCarb, as they've jumped up a lot, with 2 very equal drivers being just 7 points off each other. And surprisingly, our season 1 champion has fallen to 5th place. In 4th we have Stroll, and in 3rd, surprisingly, Lawson has outperformed Doohan to finish 3rd. But that leaves us with the Haas team to finish 1-2 in the standings. But who would be first? Well, it was a very convincing lead, as Paul Aaron would take the title as a rookie despite only getting 2 wins. It was no surprise then that Haas cleaned up in the constructors, as they were miles ahead of 2nd placed Alpine, and VCarb move up a few places into 3rd. So that makes it 2 rookie champions in 2 years, so let's see who's getting dropped as we move to the moves. Well, I guess after disappointing for a few years, Stroll was dropped by Aston Martin for Colapinto. My guess is that Daddy Stroll protested for a new point system so that Lance could finally get a title, and yet even with this, he couldn't beat out 2 rookies of the sport. Lawrence would then be banned for destroying the sport entirely, and Lance would then be dropped by Aston. It's the only way that makes sense to me. Anyways, getting back on track, Hamilton would be dropped by Ferrari, with Norris moving teams again, Russell moving to Lando's old seat again, Sainz going to McLaren, Albon moving to Mercedes, Lawson heading to Williams, and finally Alonso coming back to the sport with Alpine. This is the first time I've seen Fernando get dropped after season 1 and actually come back to the sport without retiring. So let's see if he can get number 33 and a 3rd title in season 3. Well, in season 3 we've actually got the top teams scoring points in the bottom 10, with 5 wins and an extra 3 podiums being spread out amongst the drivers. Aston have fallen off massively in the absence of Stroll, but at least they have equal teammates. Lawson was in 9th place with a staggering 5 wins, which is, spoiler alert, the most of anyone in season 3, and yet he barely broke the top 10. The VCarbs were competitive again, and in 5th we've got Ocon, who's risen from 12th up into the top 5. But in 4th it's Fernando, as he did manage to get a win but couldn't claim the title. And it's another shock in 3rd, as Paul Aaron wouldn't be able to defend his title. This leaves us with Doohan and Behrman to fight it out. Doohan would only get 1 win and therefore was 21 points behind Behrman in 1st, as we have another new winner, although the rookie streak is now broken. Haas stay on top and are starting to form somewhat of a dynasty in F1 with the updated point system. Behrman and Aaron are simply too good when 11th gets the biggest points. VCarb just about hold on to 3rd place to Williams, and with all that said, let's move to the transfers. We start with Gasly being dropped by McLaren, with Russell returning after 1 year away. Antonelli would get back into a top team with Red Bull, and Bortoleto replaced him at Aston, with Solov moving to Sauber in his place. Alonso would retire after his second comeback to the sport with Alpine, with Zach O'Sullivan moving there, and finally, Hulkenberg would also retire, leading him to be replaced by another German in Tim Tramnitz at Sauber. That's all for the transfers, now time for Season 4. As soon as I call this Haas run a potential dynasty in the making, of course Behrman comes 12th. Ocon has fallen back down to 10th in the Williams, and as we move into the top 9, Aaron is also not in the top 4. Haas have lost it completely, but at least they won 2 titles. V-Carb continues to be decent in the midfield, and newcomer Solov takes a top 5 for Sauber. Doohan was once again up there in 4th for Alpine, and it's a tie for 2nd and 3rd place, as Bortoleto just about beat out Tramnitz thanks to one extra 11th place finish. So that leaves us with Franco Colapinto to take his first title, and a very surprise one for Aston, who were nowhere as of 1 season ago. Maybe this was all thanks to Bortoleto, and Argentina and Brazil can finally come together. Colapinto won it very convincingly, and this helped Aston dominating the constructors ahead of Sauber and Alpine. V-Carb finished ahead of Haas thanks to their consistency, and the American team have really fallen off, and I have no idea why. Also, Mercedes were tied with Williams for 6th place. Thanks, Albon. Into the moves. We don't have many moves in Season 4, as Antonelli heads back to Mercedes, Piastri goes the other way, and Marty was replaced at V-Carb by Jack Crawford. Quite disappointing, but let's see if Aston can keep this up in the halfway point of the sim. One thing stands out in the bottom 10 of Season 5, and that is Lawson being 14th behind Albon. Tsunoda also breaks into the top 12 for Red Bull. Ocon hasn't improved from last year, and Solov has gone from 5th to 10th for Sauber. Into the top 9, Crawford has replaced Marty pretty well, and the V-Carbs have sandwiched Jack Doohan, who has fallen off. Behrman has jumped back up to 6th place for Haas, and in 5th it's O'Sullivan for Alpine. We've got an interesting top 4 here, as it was very close. First down to 5th actually is separated by 22 points, so let's get into it. In 4th, with a massive 6 wins, it's Colapinto, and just ahead of him with just 2 wins, we have his teammate Bortoleto. 6 points up the road is 2nd place Tramnitz, and so that means that Paul Aaron has become the first driver to win multiple titles in this point system, beating out the Sauber by just 5 points thanks to his 2 extra wins. I've got no idea how Colapinto finished in 4th despite getting more wins and podiums than 1st placed Aaron, but hey, I guess he was just very consistent, and Franco probably put it in the barriers a few times. Has just about get back on top in the constructors thanks to 8 extra points, and it's Aston Martin in 2nd place. Alpine were 3rd, and V-Carb have fallen down to 5th, as the teams ahead were just a bit too strong for them. Red Bull have also moved above Mercedes in this bottom 4 fight. Alright, hopefully there's more moves this time around. Tsunoda would be dropped by Red Bull after doing a bit too well in this point system, with Norris heading back to Red Bull. Antonelli would go to Ferrari in turn, and Bortoleto had impressed in the midfield and joined Mercedes. Lawson would move to Aston, and Maloney entered the grid with Williams, with O'Sullivan being dropped to Alpine for Richard Verschoor. Let's move into Season 6. Even though he's moved to a top team, Bortoleto couldn't help but get a good chunk of points from Mercedes, as he got 5 podiums. Crawford would fall out of the top 10 as Maloney entered the grid at 11th, and Albon managed 2 wins for Mercedes. They seem to be wanting to compete in this series. Into the top 9, Colapinto was 9th with 4 wins, with Solov climbing a few spots and the Haas duo falling back after Aaron's 2nd title. Hadjar is all the way up in 5th, and in 4th it's Richard Verschoor, who had a good rookie year for Alpine despite not getting a win. In 3rd it's Lawson with another 5 wins for Aston Martin, and once again, Tramnitz was in 2nd as Jack Doohan took home his 2nd title win. Tramnitz is very consistent, as last season he finished on 224 points, and this time, despite not getting a win, he hit 222. Doohan's effort means Alpine get back on top in the constructors, with Sauber 2nd and Aston in 3rd. Mercedes have now jumped above Williams, and it will be interesting to see if they can keep rising up the standings in the years to come. But that's everything here, now let's look at the moves. We start at McLaren, as Carlos Sainz would call it quits on his career, with Antonelli moving teams again, this time to McLaren. That guy could not keep a job. Norris would go to Ferrari, as he always does in these sims. Bortoleto would move to Red Bull, and Ollie Behrman would join Mercedes. Lawson would then go to Haas, Maloney went to Aston Martin, and Marty finished the grid at Williams for Season 7. Now let's see how these midfield moves shape up the standings next season. The bottom 10 is looking pretty ordinary, so let's fast track into the top 10. The V-Cards have fallen down the order a bit, but they both still scored a good amount of points. The Williams were high up in the standings in 5th, and 8th, but it is very close in the top 10. In 4th it's Colapinto, who's risen back up to the top end of the grid. He had 5 wins, but was still 18 points behind 3rd place Tramnitz, who didn't get a single one. Just 3 points ahead of him was 2nd place Jack Doohan, as Liam Lawson takes his first title thanks to 3 wins and 9 podiums. I don't know if Australia and New Zealand have had a war in real life, but this title fight might have tipped them over the edge. But New Zealand came out on top here, with Liam helping Haas get back on top in the constructors once again. Aaron was down in 6th, but he was only 40 points behind, which goes to show just how close this point system has made the standings. But now it's time for the moves. Piastri got the ball rolling by moving to Mercedes, with Russell heading the other way and Behrman joining McLaren in George's place. Ocon would be dropped by Williams after 6 seasons at the team, and he was replaced by Zach O'Sullivan. Norris would surprisingly retire from the sport in season 7, and that led Antonelli to go back to Ferrari, Bortoleto to join McLaren, Colapinto to move to Red Bull, Lawson to move to Aston Martin, and finally Gasly to go to Haas. These are some of the weirdest moves I've seen in this game, so let's see how they change the standings in season 8. In the bottom 10, we can see the usual suspects until we get to 11th and 12th. Aston have really fallen off, but maybe that is thanks to Colapinto leaving. Lawson and Maloney were very equal, but quite mid in this point system, and it led to Aston finishing in 7th in the constructors. Into the top 9, Hadjar seems to score the same amount of points every year and is always in the top 10. The Alpines have fallen back a bit, and a massive shock in here is Albon in 6th. That's way too high considering teammate Piastri finished in 14th. Gasly's comeback saw him in 5th, and in 4th it was Tramnitz who scores his first win since season 5. But in 1st, 2nd and 3rd, it's an incredibly close title fight between 3 drivers who aren't on the current F1 grid and between 3 separate constructors. So how do I lay this out? Crawford took an early lead in the championship by scoring consistent and good points. Aaron had taken more wins and was in better form for the run-in, and Solov was in a similar situation. But then, in the 3rd to last race, the game bugged out and did this. This meant that no one got a result, and the game issued these dashes in the results chart. So, Vegas. Paul Aaron would finish 10th, so that's 0 points. Solov would finish 16th, which gave him 8 points, but Crawford finished even lower, coming 18th and getting only 4 points. But in Abu Dhabi, Paul Aaron would score a crucial 11th place as Solov was once again 16th and Crawford was 18th again. So how did it end? Well, it was Solov in 3rd, and then in 2nd, it's Paul Aaron as Jack Crawford somehow clinched the title by 1 point. And yes, he didn't get a single 11th place all year. You can look for yourself in the results chart. Absolutely mental, and I'm pretty sure that is the first time anyone has finished 1st and not won a race in one of my sims. Someone can fact check that for me. The constructor standings would see the top 3 inversed as Sauber were top and VCarb were 3rd. An insane season and a nice new winner, and considering where he's been the past few years, this was a massive surprise. But with all that said, let's see who's moved. We start at Sauber as big moves are happening. Tim Tramnitz has been dropped after being beaten for the first time by his teammate, and in his place comes Season 8's champion, Jack Crawford. Victor Martins would join VCarb in Crawford's place. On the other side of the grid, Leclerc would retire, leading Piastri to move to Ferrari, Paul Aaron to go to Mercedes, and Yuki Tsunoda to join Haas. It's sad to see you go, Paul Aaron, but enjoy the upper midfield. Now time for season 9. Mercedes have finally realised where they should be in this point system and have moved back to the bottom 10. It's actually very surprising how many midfield drivers who succeeded with this point system made it into the top 4 teams. It's almost like the teams knew about it and were judging their talent based off it. Anyways, Aston have not moved places in 11th and 12th, and the top 9 is where things get tasty. Haas are in formation in 8th and 9th, the Williams aren't too far away from each other in points but are 7th and 10th, and the VCarbs are also in formation. Moving into the top 4, in 4th we have Crawford who has not managed to defend his crown, and you'll see in a second that he didn't even come close. In 3rd we have Jack Doohan with 209 points, and in 2nd it's a highest ever finish for Nikola Zolov as Richard Verschoor has become the 7th different driver to win the title in this point system. And I'm sorry for the young Verschoor jump scare. It was the only good picture I could find of him, and of course it's when he was in F3. That was like 6 years ago. He's been in F2 for 5 seasons now. Verschoor didn't need to score many wins and finished a comfortable 37 points ahead of Zolov, helping Alpine get another Constructors' Championship. The order is looking pretty ordinary all things considered, so let's move on to the final driver moves of the video. Starting at Mercedes, Albon would be dropped in favour of Yuki Tsunoda. This meant that Callum Voisin would join the grid with Haas, and Piastri would move to Aston Martin. Bortoleto then went to another top team in the form of Ferrari, with Russell rejoining McLaren and Maloney joining Red Bull. So let's see if we can get 8 different champions in the final year of this pretty weird save. In season 10, the order has slightly changed at the back as Williams have fallen back a bit and Colapinto has broken into the left side of the board. The Haas cars were 8th and 10th, with Voisin getting 3 wins in his rookie year, and Verschoor has gone from a title to 7th place. The VCarbs are in the same spot as they were last year, and as we move into the top 4, we have Nikola Zolov in 4th, Crawford back in front of his teammate in third, and Lawson in second for Aston as Jack Doohan wins his third title to become the undisputed king of the 11th place championship. He only needed one win to do it, but this guy is a vet now and he's been with Alpine for all 10 seasons. Talking about GOATs, would you like to see a video putting this point system on real life F1 season? I feel like we'll get some amazing winners like Marcus Ericsson, maybe a bit of Romain Grosjean, I don't know. It could be quite a cool video. But for now, while I deliberate on that, make sure to check out this video where first place gets disqualified every race. It's a good one.